What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And in today's episode, we're dealing with a couple problem childs. One that we've worked on in the past, you guys have seen a few times, and one that is kind of new. You guys have seen little snippets of it, and we're going to kind of put all that footage in this video as well. So if you haven't seen the other videos where you saw a little bit of this, you'll kind of get updated as we go throughout this video. But this is a blue 2011 Mustang GT owned by Zach Baum and his dad. They're big Mustang guys. This one is Zach's. He has a built... Oh, you gonna be on the camera? Okay, there's your camera. So it is a built Coyote with a sweet MFP brace. It has a Gen3r VMP on top, lockouts, all the timing stuff we went through. The main problem that we found with this thing is that the cam timing was locked out incorrectly. So we got that all changed up. Dan's working on trying to get a blower belt on this thing to make sure it's going to be nice and tight. Previously, they were having problems with belt slippage, but I think it's because since the cam timing was wrong, it was making an absorbent amount of boost due to restriction in the intake path. So hopefully we don't have that belt slip problem, because it should make like 25, 28 pounds, not 36, 37 like they were making. So pretty interesting. It's all coming together. We're going to hopefully have this in the next couple days. If you don't see it in this episode, you'll see it in the next episode going together. And then we have to go through the process of retuning it and redoing the entire thing, because it doesn't shift well, it doesn't drive well, it doesn't run well. Unfortunately, this was another shop's baby that they pretty much took from, I don't want to say stock, but from a really mild build to extremely wild, and fumbled it. So we're hopefully going to pick it back up, carry it into the end zone. In the meantime, while Dan is working on that, we kind of switched. I'm working on Emir's car again. And this thing has had a vibration at high speeds and above legal limit speeds. So I'm diving into really small stuff now, and what I just did is I have a dial indicator. I still have one set up. So this one's set up on the transmission yoke, so this is kind of telling me the run out of the tail shaft. That could lead to tail shaft bushing, the main shaft in the transmission, or the yoke itself in the trans. Typically it's going to lead to main shaft or the bushing, and I would want to see probably between 1 and 3 on this. Trying to show you, if I can do it, you're gonna need a little shake. Pretty much doesn't move. I get as high, as much as 3 right there. You can see it peaks and then comes back down. Or it's peaking right there, and now it's coming back down. So it's bouncing between 1 and 3. So there's about 2 thousandths run out on that side. Not terrible. But I set up the whole thing on the drive shaft yoke here. Now I did the pinion flange. The pinion flange did have a little bit more. The pinion flange had about 5 thousandths. But I set it up on this drive shaft yoke here, and I had like 12 from one side to the other. So what I did was I rotated it on the flange to see if it would kind of change it, and it didn't. So the flange does have a little bit, but it seems to be true. The bolt holes must be truer, and it still had the same amount of offset in the same spots, meaning that the shaft itself might have something wrong. Now, luckily, Dan did a magnum swap on his car, so we have his factory drive shaft out of his car. Now, we were under the impression this was a factory drive shaft, but now that I see this one, it is not. So a couple of the differences here are that the welds and the flange, the weight design, all of this is different. If you look at the other side, it's got a really big, really heavy MIG weld. This is different. It only has a very small yoke end. It doesn't have like that big separate piece.
Yeah, I noticed. Look at this.
The weld is different. The weight is different. There's a big piece of slag in that weld. I'm going to put that one in here. I'm going to reset up the rig for the run out. Show you guys what I'm talking about. We'll see if this one does it too. I'm hoping that it doesn't. And then we'll leave this shaft in there. We'll go drive it above legal speed limits and see if the vibration got any better.
Closed course.
Yeah, closed course, professional drivers only. That's the only way we do it. Above what the normal speeds would be. And we'll see if the vibration gets any better. We did put it back on an alignment rack. We put some toe in and front and back to make sure that it's not finding the limit of the front control arm bushings and wobbling around. It does have a bad wheel bearing. Not terrible. It doesn't make noise, but it should be enough to cause a little bit of wiggle and shake in the wheel. But there's something greater at bay at really high speeds. So everything checks out pretty nicely except for this part. So we're going to swap the drive shaft, and I'll show you guys that in just a second. Yeah. This is definitely a headache to change the belt on this thing. An hour is
In the car?
yeah, I don't think so.
Only if you've done it 100 times, maybe.
Maybe.
And power tools.
You have to take obviously all these bolts off. Then you got this pulley through bolted here, pulley through bolted here. This belt has to come off in order to even get at the back belt to start. Then you gotta put it all on and then put this on to tension it. And you gotta make sure this is lined up in the car. I don't know. I mean, I guess we did a little more difficult where I just had all the bolts already in there and then I just lined it up.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't be bad if you just put this on and then put each individual bolt in, but still, this would be a headache too.
Yeah.
Because it's top heavy, it'll just fall right out. You can't just set it there.
Looks good though.
Not too
We
bad.
cleaned it up
I
a
should
bit.
figure out
It's all
how
black.
this all works.
That's. Yeah, we gotta see if we can rotate that tensioner to get more tension out of it. You don't have a whole lot of belt choices on the 10 rib. There's like a 2-inch shorter or a 2-inch longer. Unlike the 8 ribs that we typically use on like the red car where you have increments of like 1/8 inches.
Yeah,
You
cool.
could really squeeze every little bit out of the belt tension. This one we don't. This is the closest one we have. So what are going to do is try to move the tension around to get a little bit more belt tension out of it, because going to a smaller belt setup is really not going to be an option in this case.
Yeah, you can't have a smaller. This crank support, which is I think overkill for this setup. You can get like a basic one that still supports the crank and doesn't need to go way up here, but that one probably would have done the job. But in order for this one to work, you need to have a 10 rib conversion.
Yeah.
I just saw. Yeah, you can't run, huh? You can't run the other way.
Leave it. Leave it. She's crazy. Leave it. Drop it. Leave it. Hey, leave it. Alright guys, so I got the dial indicator set up on the factory shaft out of Dan's car. Alright, so now you can kind of see what we're looking at here. The other one was going about 7 each way. It had about 12 to 14 degrees, 12 to 14 thousandths of run out. This one goes 3 and then 3. So we're going to try this one. And what we might try is where the drive shaft is off the one way as far as possible, we might put like a washer or two on the other side to counteract the weight difference. That was an article that I read on Mustangs and Fast Forwards when they had a problem like this. So I'm going to put a couple washers on the low slot side of the drive shaft also, and then go take it for a ride and see how she drives. And if that fixes it, then it's going to be a new thing that we have to check on 0304 Cobras when they come in. There was a recall on these, Dan pointed out.
Which that could have been what that is.
And that could be the stock shaft. Maybe Dan's is a replacement shaft that got the recall done, and that for vibration, driveline vibrations. And now that we put all the FTBR stuff in the back, you really felt it. So I'm gonna tighten up the bolts, put a couple washers on the low side, and we'll go for a test drive. All right, Dan got the MFP crank support on. I mean, I gotta say, this engine looks freaking killer though. Belt is tight. The other one was stretched out quite a bit. Probably put heat put into the belt. Now we're going to change a few more things. Fuel line routing is going to be different just because it was unserviceable before. So we're going to change a couple fitting locations. They had this going to the Y block right on the, right there if you can see it. Oh, the camera's focusing on it, but it was like impossible because you couldn't get to these fittings and you couldn't get to the Y block fittings on the firewall. So it was really hard to take them off. So we're going to actually change it to go to the regulator with the rear ones and go to the Y block with the front ones, because you can get the front, you can get to the front ones, so you can take those off, and you can get to the regulator, so you can take those off, and then you could drop the engine out rather than having to pull the blower to get to these fuel lines. Or what we did is, halfway down dropping the engine, we were able to reach up in there and unscrew them from the Y block, which is stupid. So we're going to change that a little bit. It won't really change anything in the fuel system, but the thing looks sweet. The wiring harness is all back on. For the most part, it's ready to go back in the car. We're going to change the vacuum, a couple vacuum lines, fuel lines, and jam her back in, right, Dan?
Yes, sir.
For the most part. All right. And we're going to go take this thing for a ride real quick. Laura, you're going to have to move.
Look at that. No more motor underneath it. It is now up and in the car. Drop the car back on the engine. K-member in. Everything's in. We should have finalized up top. But it is now in the car. And yeah, so now we're going to interrupt the blue car for now because Anarchy is tomorrow. And we have to prep the Lightning for a little bit valve spring swap. So that's what we're doing now. It actually likes this lighting. Looks good. Making sure the installed height is all good. As I was saying before I got interrupted by the air compressor, we are swapping to pack 1222X springs from the factory 11R heads. That's what they had prior. So we're doing 1220X springs, get a little more pressure on the seat, open, and yeah, so here's a little comparison of the two. Obviously the old one on this side, new one on this side.
There's shims from the factory, Brian, or with the shims in it?
You can squeeze the inside pretty easily on this one. And you can kind of, you can't really see it, but I can squeeze the inside nice and easy on this. Can't really get the outside too much. Whereas this one, you can't even.
No, it's less.
I can squeeze the outside a little bit, but you can't even compress the inside.
60 instead of 1/800.
Either way, these are a lot stiffer than these.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to do a titanium retainer, so that will, you know, lighten up the drivetrain or lighten up the valve train a little bit, and yeah, maybe it'll rev a little quicker. So. Like I said, we're swapping over all the valves, valve springs, and get her back ready to go. Get ready to run 1080 in Anarchy tomorrow.
What'd you say?
We'll probably get a little bit of a testing in Mexico later tonight too. So. Oh, these have gaskets too, don't they?
They what?
Like the gaskets are gonna push.
All right, we are wrapping up the valve spring install. Doing this on the truck, it was not, I don't want to say it was difficult, but it was pretty time consuming. Wasn't ideal. That's a good way to put it. Like most of them, 75% of them went really well because we could use the LSM valve spring tool, which is the greatest thing ever, until you run into the firewall. So we couldn't use it on the back 3 springs over there or the back 2 on this side. We had to take the throttle body off. And we were able to use the LSM spring tool for all of them except for those. But we came out with a handy little solution, which was take a LS valve spring tool, a little simple basic one, hog the center out for the 7/16 stud on the small block forward, and use that. A little sketchier, definitely a little bit more, you need a couple hands on deck to do it that way. But that was how we were able to do it without taking the firewall box off, and that would have really sucked. So now we're getting ready to put it back together. We got to put all the rockers and push rods in it, set all the valves, valve covers, piping, start it. So hopefully we'll be done in the next couple hours here.